Since the dawn of the modern foldable phone, there have been 2 or 3 compromises, or at least hindrances to you maybe actually buying one. One of those, of course, is the price tag at nearly $2,000 or £2,000. It's hardly an impulse buy. And when you marry that with a screen that's less durable and creased, and a camera system that doesn't match the top-tier slab phones, it can often leave a bit of a sour taste. But with this phone, it feels very much like at least 2 of those problems are no more. I'm Cam Bunton from Trusted Reviews, and this is the Oppo Find N6. Oh, and while you're here, if you do like the video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and tap that notification bell. Thanks. For the past few years, we've seen these foldable phones become super thin. This thanks mostly to companies like Oppo and Honor, who led the charge with devices like the Find N5 and the Magic V3. And in truth, compared to its predecessor, the Find N6 hasn't changed massively. It's still a comfortably slim phone that's easy to hold in one hand when shut. That's thanks to the fact it's quite a narrow aspect ratio at nearly 21:9. We're at a point now where, unless we suddenly had no more need for USB-C ports, these phones can't get any slimmer either. But what's hard to appreciate just by looking at it is that the phone is actually more comfortable to hold and to use than the Find N5 was. That's largely thanks to the fact that those sleek metal edges are now chamfered, and so don't have as sharp a corner to any of the sides. It's a small change, but one that makes the phone just that bit more usable. You could argue that the rounded corners around the display and the sides mean it doesn't have that super precise, minimalist appeal of the Galaxy Z Fold 7, but aesthetically, that's entirely personal preference. I would argue that Samsung makes better use of that front space, but I'll leave that comparison for later, if you want it. Sound off in the comments if you do. Oppo, despite its thinness, hasn't topped the charts in terms of lightness. Again, it doesn't feel like the lightest around, but for a phone of its type, it's still some way off the heft of the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, and only marginally heavier than either Honor or Samsung's models. It's pretty durable too. It's not fully dust tight, but with a triple IP54, 58 and 59 rating, it's water resistant against spray, submersion and jets of water. So if you're the type to regularly use your phone in the rain, drop it in the sink or knock your drinks over it, there aren't any or many folding phones quite as capable of surviving those instances. But the big story for anyone that's been following the folding phone market is the crease on the inside, or the lack of it. Oppo's come up with a new hinge, which uses 3D printed parts to smooth out the display when open. So the result is a crease with a depth that's less than the thickness of a human hair. Now, our fingertips are super sensitive when it comes to feeling dips, contours and changes in surface texture. So if you run your fingers across it, you can still feel it. But it's nowhere near as obvious as any foldable screen that's come before it. And with the phone open and with the screen off, it's invisible to the eye unless you catch it in the right light. What I'm saying is that it's possible to ignore, and I'd say about as good as I can imagine it's ever going to get. It's really impressive, and unlike some other phones where the crease seems to get more noticeable the more you use it, this Oppo crease is just the same as the day I took it out the box. And that's after about a month of use. In fact, Oppo claims that with what it calls auto-smoothing flex glass, it will still look brand new after 200,000 folds. If you open your phone 20 times a day, that's 10,000 days. If you open it 100 times a day, you're looking at 2,000 days, or 5.5 years. That's pretty astonishing. At least it is if it holds up to those claims. And as durability goes, Oppo claims the hinge can last up to 1,000,000 folds. So if the crease and the durability of that internal screen and the hinge are the reasons you've not bought a folding phone, this is the phone for you. And that leads us nicely onto the canvas itself and how Oppo makes use of that. So that 8.12-inch internal display is fantastic. Its bright, smooth AMOLED panel can hit 120 Hz. It's also LTPO, so it can adapt and change at fine increments to suit whatever is on the screen. It can even hit up to 2,500 nits, so it's bright too. And with over 2,000 pixels in each direction, it's got an impressively sharp 412 pixel per inch display. It's an absolute joy for everyday tasks like scrolling through TikTok, watching YouTube, or even editing videos in CapCut with its foldable friendly UI. It's a little reflective and quite easy to smudge, with it being coated in plastic rather than glass, but that's to be expected from a foldable phone. To me, now that display tech has reached as far as it can in terms of brightness, refresh rates and colour, of much larger importance, particularly for devices with tablet-like screens on the inside, is how the software makes use of that space. With the latest version of ColorOS 16 based on Android 16, Oppo has arguably done that better than anyone. A lot of it is similar to what you'll find on the Find X9 series in terms of the adoption of transparencies that are similar to liquid glass from Apple and a suite of AI tools. That includes the mind space, which effectively acts as a way to gather thoughts, ideas and to-do items. And what makes this phone different is a fully featured window app mode called Free Flow Windows. This enables a desktop-like experience that lets you use up to 4 resizable windows on screen at the same time. You can let the phone arrange them automatically or drag them around and position them as you see fit. And if you don't like that desktop style mode, it still has the traditional full screen multitasking experience that's more like what you'd find on the Find N5. So there's a lot of flexibility here, both figuratively and literally. As for the cover display, that feels a tiny bit duller by comparison, but shares most of the same key specs as the main display. It's bright, fluid and crispy sharp, plus the bezels are skinnier than last time too. It's a great size for scrolling through social media, replying to messages and reading stories. It would be great if it was a little wider though. It's still quite tall and narrow compared to your more traditional bar-style devices, but still, I wasn't ever really aware of my thumbs tripping over each other while typing, so not so narrow that it becomes fiddly to use. I just wouldn't use it for much more than messaging and reading stories. Now, with the previous foldable, the Find N5, Oppo sacrificed in the camera department to achieve its super thin build, but the N6 has tried to rectify that somewhat. It's got a 200 megapixel main camera alongside a dual 50 megapixel ultra-wide and telephoto zoom lens. The ultra-wide also has autofocus this time, and underlying hardware that's much more capable of competing with premium bar phones. The star of the show though is undoubtedly the 200 megapixel main sensor. With its wide f-stop 1.7 aperture and a larger sensor, it can drink in more light than the other two. It's a very competent camera both in well-lit and poorly lit situations. But regardless of which camera used, the photos are generally a lot more true to life in terms of colour compared to Samsung's alternative. That's mainly thanks to the system employing that true colour camera sensor that we also saw in the Find X9 Pro. Its entire reason for existence is to measure colour so that any photos taken make the most of the different colours and gradients in the scene. That also means the colours across all 3 lenses are pretty consistent. The 50 megapixel 3x zoom is mostly unchanged from last time, and it's still a lot more competent a zoom lens than the lower resolution 3x zoom on the Z Fold 7. That 3x length is ideal for portrait photography, especially when paired with the dedicated portrait modes in the camera app. Zooming into distant buildings or landscapes, you do still get to that 10x limit where the quality starts to drop off as it fights its limits. But combined with the other 2 lenses means you have here a very versatile system. It's when the light levels drop that the limits of the camera tech start to appear more. Not necessarily with the main camera, which is still pretty strong, but when using the ultra-wide and zoom lenses which aren't quite as large and can't draw in as much light effectively. It does well enough in dim bars, clubs and street lamp lit streets, but the aperture isn't quite wide enough for proper low light photography. With smartphone components fighting for precious space in super slim foldable devices, there just simply isn't enough room to fit in the largest sensors, lens systems and stabilization abilities. So in truth, that means there is still something of a compromise in the camera department. But I'd still argue that overall, this is a strong system compared to any other foldable and is more than good enough for most people. Now, as I mentioned just now in the camera department, space is at a premium in these folding slim devices. And that means limited room for massive batteries and power-hungry chipsets that require lots of cooling tech to keep them running smoothly. The one way Oppo counteracts that is by using a slightly underpowered version of the top Snapdragon chipset. It's the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, but instead of having 8 cores, it only has 7. And so while the performance doesn't quite match that of the Galaxy S26 Ultra or the OnePlus 15, it's still a very fast, very capable device. Using it day in and day out as a primary phone, regardless of what I did with it, it never felt like anything was a struggle. Even multitasking using multiple apps on the screen at the same time isn't an issue. The only time you get the sense this might not be quite as performant as the top tier slabs is when running really demanding games titles or benchmarking it using stress tests. Its lower core count and poorer thermals means it throttles sooner than those aforementioned powerhouse smartphones. So if you're into games like Genshin Impact and go for long sessions, this isn't for you. But for anything else, it's been pretty much flawless. Arguably more important though of a phone like this than graphics performance is battery life. And here, Oppo's onto something of a winner. When you consider Samsung's alternative has a puny 4,400 mAh battery, Oppo's 6,000 mAh by comparison is huge. Thanks to using a modern silicon carbon battery, Oppo's managed to squeeze just about every ounce of capacity you could hope for into a phone this slim. And how much you get from it depends again on how you use it. And to give you two ends of the extreme, Lewis, who I work with, who did our written review after testing it for a month, uses it all day for everything in a 5G area and found that even he could get it to last a full day, hitting between 10 and 20% at bedtime. Crucially, not needing to reach for a charger during the day like you would definitely need to with the Samsung phone. And this is someone who can drain the battery in the Oppo Find X9 Pro in less than 2 days, and that's a 7,500 mAh capacity. Me on the other hand, I am very different. I'm a pretty light user, and so this Find N6 on my more casual days where I use about 2 or 3 hours in a day for social media, WhatsApp and YouTube, I can just about get it through a second day too. The likelihood is you're somewhere in between mine and Lewis's use cases. And so a full day on a full charge is more than reasonable to expect for most people who use this phone. And it'll charge pretty quickly afterwards too anyway if you run flat and you have a Super VOOC charger, which you might need to buy extra because it doesn't come in a box. In the end, one thing is clear to me about the Find N6, and that's the fact that it is the strongest all-round book-style foldable we've seen yet, and the one with the fewest compromises. I like it a lot. It combines a near creaseless display with refined hardware design and much better cameras than before. It's got all-day battery for even the most demanding users, all wrapped in a package that feels like the foldable market is finally ready for more than just early adopters and tech enthusiasts. There is something of a stinger in this tale though, and it's quite a big one. Outside a few Asian markets, Australia and New Zealand, Oppo has no plans for a wider release. So you're going to struggle to get hold of one. If you want it, you're going to have to import it, and without local support, that might just sour your experience. But if there ever was a foldable phone worth the risk of importing for, which I'm not saying you should do, it's this one. So let me know what you think. Is this the foldable phone you've been waiting for, and are you going to take the risk of importing it? Let me know in the comments, or you can grab me on Threads. I'm at CamBunton over there. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and tap that notification bell, and I'll see you again in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.